Good evening and welcome to the KRQE News 13 Digital Studio. It is June 7th, and of course that means it is primary election night across New Mexico. You're getting a live look at us here in the News 13 Digital Studio. Curtis Segarra is joining me here. The polls have now closed. It is 7 o'clock, and we are ready to take you through some of the results that we are already seeing for this primary election. And hello again to these closer view cameras. I'm Chris McKee here, joined again by Curtis Segarra. Curtis, you're our KRQE News 13 investigative data reporter. Tell us a little bit about what you do for folks who haven't got a chance to meet you yet.
Yeah, sure thing, Chris. Thanks for having me. I do pretty much anything with numbers, whether that's election results, campaign finances, things outside of politics, environmental numbers, just crunching the data, looking at what the numbers can tell us about today's news. Excellent.
Well, we are glad to have you here because I know you do a lot of research to put together your stories. And for anybody who has not checked out your stories, you can go to krqe.com/author/Curtis-Segarra. And you can find his stories there. You can also see he's got that hashtag there, Hey Curtis, and mine as well, Hey Chris. And you can tweet at us. We're hoping to run through basically election results with you guys here tonight over probably about the next hour, dovetailing into our coverage on KRQE News 13 at 9:30 on Fox New Mexico, and also News 13 at 10. So we mentioned that some of the first results are coming in, and we do want to put those here on your screen right now in this primary election. Arguably the biggest race that is happening here now is regarding the Republican primary for the governor's office. Right now, what we are seeing is just some of the first votes are coming in, and Mark Ronchetti has taken a sizable lead in just, again, with 2% of the vote in. So we're not talking about a whole lot of numbers back here in this point, but you can obviously see that there is a big disparity in that field right now. Mark Ronchetti with over 1,200 votes, Greg Zanetti there with 207, Jay Block there with 175, Rebecca Dow with 127. Now, Curtis, before we go a little bit further with some of these results, you know, you had a chance, you just published an article here online this afternoon taking a look at some of the finances of the governor's race. I want to get into that real quick here. What have we seen in terms of how much money has been raised and how much spending has happened so far in this governor's race, which is, again, in the primary phase here tonight?
Yeah. Well, viewers out there will probably know some of this because they've seen the ads. Of course, campaign finance goes towards paying for TV ads, mailers, yard signs even. And so you've seen some of this, but the numbers behind it reveal that Michelle Lujan Grisham has a lot more money in this governor primary race than anyone else. Of course, she is uncontested, but she does have a large pool of money to draw from. Behind her, we do have Mark Ronchetti, who has around $4 million earned through contributions and other sources. So that puts him at a sizable lead in terms of the amount of money he can spend on things like TV ads, mailers, and other ways to push his message out. Okay. And just get that facial recognition to make sure that viewers know who he is, know who they're voting for. Some of the other Republican candidates haven't earned quite as much. Rebecca Dow is in second place in terms of those Republican candidates, earning around $2 million and spending around $1.5 million. Like you said, Chris, there is a full article on KRQEnews13.com where you can see some of these charts that we're showing on screen now. You can read more of the details. But I want to say that I spoke with a professor over at UNM in this article, and he mentioned the fact that this money is really important, especially at the primary stage, because a lot of these candidates are going to be pushing similar messages. They're going to be having similar platforms. So getting your name out there, getting your image on TV, on mailers, is really what's going to separate a candidate at this stage. Of course, more money will be spent after the primary once people make it through that round.
So again, with about 2% of the vote in right now, Mark Ronchetti appears to have a sizable lead over his competitors. Greg Zanetti, Jay Block, Rebecca Dow, and also Ethel Maharg is the fifth name on that ballot here. Let's get to the results so far from what we're seeing from our second biggest race this evening. And this is one where I think we're probably going to see things pretty tight throughout the evening. This is just based on some conversations that we've had here on KRQE related to political scientists. Tim Krebs is featured on our this week's episode of the New Mexico News Podcast, talking about his expectations. This is going to be a pretty tight race, and what we can see right now is just about a 30-vote difference almost between these two candidates, less than 30 votes rather. Raul Torres with 5,065 votes to Brian Colon's 5,091. These two candidates, of course, are no stranger to New Mexico politics. We know them very well, as Raul Torres is the current Bernalillo County District Attorney, so covers all of the prosecution that happens in Albuquerque and a few of the areas just around Albuquerque. And then Brian Colon as well, New Mexico State Auditor, and somebody as well who's been in politics for quite some time. He as well has been out there in other races, like he ran for lieutenant governor in 2010. That was, of course, the election where Susana Martinez took office. Brian Colon as well, again, the state auditor for the last 4 years. Regardless of what happens tonight, Brian Colon will not be the state auditor come 2023. You can only run for one race at a time, and it appears that Brian Colon picked this attorney general's race. This is a very tight race, and what we talked about as well, one of the two biggest races here, what we talked about, I should reference what I'm thinking of, is the article that you had written for KRQE.com, Curtis. You also took a look at the candidates' finances in this race, where seems to be a lot of money spent and raised, rather, really, as well.
A lot of money, and the results so far have been really close. Some of the finances have been really close as well. Raul Torres didn't raise quite as much as of earlier this morning, raising around 1.25 million. Brian Colon raised a little over 1.6 million, so a lot of money, not as much as in the governor's race, but a lot of money for this race. And their expenditures, the amount they're spending on ads, on getting their name out there, have been pretty close. Both Brian Colon and Raul Torres have spent similar amounts, both spending over $1 million to push their message, to get in front of the voters. And we're seeing that play out in the polls. We're seeing that this is one of those interesting ones because they both have a lot of political experience, slightly different from each of them. And of course, we've dug into that through debates here at KRQE News 13. But as you mentioned, Chris, they both have a pretty extensive bio. Both seem more or less qualified and experienced for this role. So I think voters are voting based on that.
These are some of the bios we put together here for the KRQE debate that just happened several weeks ago. Raul Torres, of course, has served as an assistant district attorney. He has worked as an assistant attorney general as well before his time with the Bernalillo County District Attorney's Office. He as well was a federal prosecutor for the U.S. Attorney's Office, of course. Then we've got Brian Colon here as well. Mr. Colon as well, he has, as I'd mentioned a little bit earlier, been around the New Mexico Democratic Party for quite some time, at one point serving as the chairman. He's been the auditor for the last 4 years. He has run a couple times in prior elections unsuccessfully. We know that unsuccessful run first was for lieutenant governor in 2010 alongside Diane Dennis against Susana Martinez. And as well, the other one I'm thinking of here is 2017, the Albuquerque mayor's race. That's he came in third place, I believe, in that race. But of course, the rules for the Albuquerque mayor's race is that if there is if no candidate gets 50%, the top two go to a runoff, and Brian Colon had just missed that runoff. So, again, the reason why we're talking about these two candidates, a very tight race here tonight. You can see more of the vote totals coming in, now up to 9%, and just like that, the role change happens there. Raul Torres now with just a slight lead over Brian Colon, but of course, way too early to say anything conclusive about this race.
Maybe we should talk a little bit about what exactly the Attorney General's office that they're running for is, what it does. We talked about their backgrounds. They both have a lot of experience as lawyers, doing things in the courtroom. That Attorney General's office really is the state's main office in terms of prosecution or defense wherever the state is a party, at like the Supreme Court or the State Court of Appeals level. So they really can prosecute or defend anytime they feel like it's in the interest of the state. They can also be called upon by the state's governor to do so. They do things like focusing on border violence, criminal apprehensions, cases where fraud is involved, Medicaid fraud, internet crimes against children. These are big, high-profile cases that affect lots of people across the state. So we've seen that in their messaging. They both want to kind of position themselves as someone who has that trial experience, who will stand up for New Mexico's people and consumers and citizens.
Indeed, and what we're seeing again right now here is just a slight lead there for the Raul Torres campaign. As you get another look at the vote total here, just a 71 vote difference right now in this race. So those are definitely two of the biggest ones that we are paying attention to tonight, but we know that there are also some federal races to pay attention to related to Congress, of course, right? The U.S. House of Representatives up on your ballot every 2 years. So this midterm election, again, New Mexico News Podcast, a plug for you here right now. We talked a little bit about the on this week's episode. If you haven't listened to it yet, I encourage you to go watch. A good primer for primaries, particularly this primary. But as I was saying, with this week's episode, we talked a little bit about just how these U.S. congressional races are shaping up. There are two really close ones that we should be paying attention to, I think. And that first is, of course, in Congressional District 1. This is the Republican primary. What we're seeing right now is Michelle Garcia Holmes. She is taking a lead here early with 403 votes, and then Luis Sanchez as well, 254 votes. These two candidates have definitely are no stranger to running for office. What we do know about Michelle Garcia Holmes has been running for office for nearly 6 years now. Jumped into the Albuquerque mayor's race, where I believe that she ended up taking. I'm just taking a look over at my notes here. Michelle Garcia Holmes ended up in 6th place in that 2017 Albuquerque mayor's race. After that, she ended up running for the lieutenant governor position in the 2018 election for governor, of course. That's where Michelle Lujan Grisham and Howie Morales won their first terms. Michelle Garcia Holmes has run for Congress as well. She ran in 2020, won the Republican primary before, but she did lose in the general election to Deb Haaland, and she is now, of course, seeking the Congressional District 1 seat once again here, an attempt at this. Luis Sanchez, he has run for the U.S. Senate before. He did withdraw his name out of the 2020 Senate election. So that is Luis Sanchez. He is an Albuquerque businessman. He owns Calibers, those gun shops that are all around Albuquerque and gun ranges. But this is the chance to take on Melanie Stansberry here in the general election in November. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and that seat that they're running for is a little bit different this year because of redistricting. Isn't that right, Chris?
It is. It is different this year. I think that's an important sort of caveat to mention, is that redistricting has really changed the situation in terms of where you are campaigning. You know, that's in this case, Congressional District 1 used to basically encompass all of Albuquerque, and now West Side voters are finding themselves in Congressional District 2. CD1 picked up even parts of Roswell now. So Congressional District 1 has gotten more conservative in some sense. That when they redistricted, there are more conservative voters that were placed into Congressional District 1. So that is going to, I think, change the dynamics to some degree of maybe how tight that race will be come November.
Yeah, you know, some political analyses of those seats, those districts, shows that this latest redistricting, which just the quick background is that every 10 years we have the census and they count all the people in the state. Based on that count, the state will redraw its political lines so that those seats, those areas are competitive and have equal populations. So with that, we do have a little bit more competitive districts now. We used to have 2 majority blue districts and 1 red district down south, and now it's a little more competitive. As you were pointing out, Chris, District 1 does reach further south into what is traditionally conservative oil economy area. It's picked up that and included part of Albuquerque, but lost another part of Albuquerque, that west side, to District 2. So competition has increased a little bit for those seats.
Yeah. Congressional District 2, speaking of Congressional District 2, let's take a look at some of the vote count here from there. This is another competitive primary here, the Democratic primary with Gabe Vasquez. He is a former Las Cruces city councilor. And then you've also got Dr. Darshan Patel, who is running for office for the first time here this year. The current vote spread, again, 1% of the vote in, but 381 votes for Gabe Vasquez. And again, 96 votes there for Darshan Patel. Whoever wins this race will have the opportunity to take on one-term Congresswoman Yvette Harrell, who was a longtime state lawmaker. Yvette Harrell as well. People may remember her from 2018 when she had a hard-fought race against Xochitl Torres-Small, the Democrat, who ended up edging her out of the seat. Xochitl Torres-Small won that seat for the first time in a decade for Democrats. That only lasted that one term. By 2020, Yvette Harrell runs again, and she ends up winning this time. So that certainly, I think, when you think of 2018, the dynamics were certainly different. It was a President Trump midterm election, and now we're heading into a President Biden midterm election, which is certainly, as we talked a little bit about on this, again, this week's episode of the New Mexico News Podcast, Tim Krebs from UNM, political science professor, had told us that this is really going to be an uphill battle for Democrats in this congressional election, and really for a lot of these state races as well.
Yeah. We do have some other races we're looking at. I'm particularly interested in the auditor race, the state auditor race, Chris. It's a role that's not quite as front and center as something like the governor's office or maybe the attorney general's office, but it is an important role in our state. There is no Republican candidate right now, so we're seeing these two Democratic candidates face off, and it's a fairly close race so far. Yeah,
you can see the numbers there on your screen. About 6,400 votes for Joseph Maestas, a former mayor of the town of Espanola up there up north. He as well ran unsuccessfully for mayor in 2018 for the city of Santa Fe, that mayor's race. We also know that Maestas has essentially been in politics for several years. I had mentioned his background working as the Espanola mayor.
He was a former Santa Fe city councilor, was he not, besides running for mayor?
You know, that's a good question. I'd have to Google that, to be honest with you. So there's so many candidates sometimes you just can't know it all off the top of your head. But yeah, certainly he has some experience, we know, in the city of Santa Fe as well. And I think one thing to point out as well is that Maestas joined the PRC in January of 2021 and quickly announced that he would be running for auditor here. We do know that the PRC, the Public Regulation Commission, will not exist in a short amount of time. Voters, you may remember, abolished the PRC in this was one of the more recent New Mexican elections here. This was Constitutional Amendment 1, and it was on the 2020 November election. It won with about 55% of the vote. So the PRC will essentially be abolished come January 2023. So that means this year is the last year for the PRC. So obviously looking to stick around. Maestas is now running for auditor here. Zachary Quintero, I think, is an interesting person to note here as well. He's a very young political candidate here.
He is, Chris. He's about 31, 32 or so.
Yeah.
He's an NMSU economics grad. He went to UNM Law. And he does have some political background, some experience. He was appointed by Governor Grisham as the state's ombudsman, who kind of looks over the state's finances a bit. He ran for a city of Albuquerque council seat back in 2019. He didn't secure a seat, but he did gain a little bit of experience there. And I think he's kind of positioned himself as a young candidate ready to reach out and speak on behalf of young voters. I mean, he's tweeted things like that SpaceX should unionize. He has kind of this labor union backing that maybe we don't see in some of the other candidates. He has talked about pushing for cybersecurity audits of the state. He kind of wants to modernize some of the cyber elements of the office. So, interesting candidate.
Yeah, and also I think one thing to note about Mr. Quintero is that he gave Councilor Isaac Benton a run for his money in one of the more recent city council elections. That one went to a runoff. We know that Councilor Isaac Benton has been a longtime representative of downtown Albuquerque, Old Town, the North Valley. Quintero ended up coming pretty close to taking out Isaac Benton in that last city council race, which I believe was in 2021, if I'm correct.
Familiar.
November 2021.
I think we talked about it.
Yeah, it was just the last election here.
And
so
the office, of course, we have the current state auditor running for AG. That just kind of goes to show you that this is what the Albuquerque Journal has called a political springboard. This office really does kind of represent a stepping stone in a lot of young political careers or early political careers. I mean, Tim Keller, Hector Balderas all went through this office on their ascension to local politics. So it's a good stepping stone for folks that want to get their foot in the door. Their role, of course, is to kind of look into city finances, make sure there's nothing fishy going on with government spending. So it's an important role as well.
Indeed, the New Mexico State Auditor's Office, and again, currently held by Brian Colon, who's running for Attorney General, and he is not seeking re-election to that space. So, and again, as you had mentioned, there is no current Republican candidate. Nobody is running here in the Republican primary for this position. Now, we, of course, are seeing other races out here that are just worth a quick mention here. The Democratic race for treasurer, Laura Montoya, seems to be holding off Heather Benavides right now by about 4,000 votes, with about 37% of the ballot totals in here. We also are keeping an eye on as well the sheriff's race in Bernalillo County. This one is very interesting because on the Democratic side, there is a cavalcade of candidates. It is a lot. So as you're seeing here, the totals right now, John Allen appears to have the lead with more than 12,000 votes. The challenger closest to him being Rudy Mora, the current undersheriff, and Patricio Ruilobo is in third place here right now. You're seeing the other three candidates here as well. This is a 6-person primary. Pretty incredible. John Allen, again, appears to have the lead. Can you tell us a little bit more about John Allen?
Yeah, he's a former New Mexico State Police patrolman. He was then a supervisor at Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office. He has 19 years at BCSO, that Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office. He was an instructor at CNM Law Enforcement Academy. He's from Albuquerque, so he's definitely local. He has a lot of law enforcement experience, as do a lot of the other candidates in this race, it should be said. He's pushed to kind of end crime via what he calls data-driven or reform-minded law enforcement. He talked about increasing transparency and working with other departments like APD or the state police. He supports body cameras. He's talked about that. He supports media transparency and the like. So.
Yeah, I do want to get to some breaking news here. We are calling the governor's race here at this moment. Mark Ronchetti is projected to be the Republican candidate for the governor of New Mexico. You can see with more than nearly 17,000 votes right now, it is being projected that Mark Ronchetti will win this primary here tonight. The challengers at this point are not really even close. You can see 4,000 votes from Greg Zanetti, 2,000 or so from Rebecca Dow, and there Jay Block with trailing as well with about 2,000 votes. It is just with 29% of the vote in, but as we understand as well, the Republican Governors Association is responding about this. There is basically, it is being called right now by multiple folks, including the Republican Governors Association, essentially saying they believe that Mark Ronchetti has won the New Mexico primary, and we too here at KRQE.
Chris, I got to say the money talks. As we talked about, Ronchetti had kind of the most money to spend and spent the most out of these four candidates that you're seeing, and it seems to have worked. He spent nearly $1.5 million on TV ads so far, spent over $150,000 on mailers. spent around $91,000 on campaign consultants, according to data from the state. So a lot of spending, but it looks like it paid off.
Interesting. And there is certainly a lot more to come with the election coming up. We know that with a sizable amount of money, there's a guarantee that a lot of political advertising will be seen out there. But if you're just joining us here, we are talking about Mark Ronchetti, who has been declared the winner here of this New Mexico Republican primary for the governor. The Republican Governors Association has already declared that Mark Ronchetti has won in this, as well as KRQE News 13 is projecting that he has enough votes to maintain this lead with just 29% of the vote in here at this point.
So with him in the lead, it looks like he's going to face off with Governor Lujan Grisham later this year. Chris, how did their bios kind of compare? They're of course, in different parties, but we know that Ronchetti has been fairly vocal about a few key things. He's talked about wanting lower taxes in the state. He wants to support all sorts of energy in the state. He's talked about supporting not only oil and gas, but also things like solar, geothermal, hydrogen power, some of those what are considered alternative energies that the current governor supports. So maybe a little bit of overlap in terms of energy policy there, but overall he's talked about wanting less government spending and says that the current governor's spending is too high for his taste. He wants New Mexico to be a kind of producer of not only local goods, but international goods. He wants more jobs here. He doesn't like our current unemployment. He's got a lot of ideas he has talked about wanting to bring to this state, so we'll have to see how those play out in the future.
Interesting stuff here tonight, just seeing the outcome here of this primary election. Again, Mark Ronchetti with more than 17,000 votes right now, a clear lead over his competitors in this five-way primary race. One of the other big races, of course, we've been talking about tonight. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but let's get back to it again because we expect this to be a tighter race, but the lead has widened out now here for Raul Torres in the Democratic primary for Attorney General. You can see more than 23,000 votes for Raul Torres and Brian Colon with more than 18,000 votes, but the split on that being at 55% to 44% with Torres edging out Brian Colon here at this point.
Chris, what did you take away from the debate that we had here in the studio a few weeks back between these two? It was pretty heated.
Yeah, I think that was one of the first things that I can say that I took away from this debate was that, man, these guys are pretty upset with each other. They see the world pretty differently in terms of what you should do with the Attorney General's office. That was a really heated conversation where I think to sum it up in basically it's that Raul Torres says Brian Colon doesn't have a record as a prosecutor, and Brian Colon says Raul Torres has an awful record as a prosecutor, and essentially that he is a failed prosecutor. Those were Brian Colon's words, whereas Raul Torres says, Brian Colon has never prosecuted a parking ticket. He has never prosecuted a single case. And so you have seen some of the advertising come out of there. We talked a lot about just how much money is already being spent in this Attorney General's race. And to note, whoever does win this Democratic primary here, which Torres appears to have the lead here at this point, but whoever does win this Democratic primary is expected to have a good chance at least taking the office, and that is just based on historical standing with the AG's office. It has not gone to a Republican very often in, say, the last 20 years, at least. I can roughly say that.
Chris, you talked about them having different ideas of what should be done in this office. We've certainly seen that with the messaging they put out in their campaigns. Colon says he's open to using outside counsel, that is hiring lawyers from out of state to help with New Mexico-based cases, these big cases that take a lot of lawyers, a lot of resources. Sometimes it maybe is a good idea to bring in experts from outside of state to help out with that. But Torres says he really wants to use less out-of-state law firms to keep those jobs, to keep that work here in New Mexico. Torres has talked about smart on crime policies and ending what he calls revolving door of crime. We know crime has been a big talking point with his work, and we know that Colon has a history of doing work to kind of stop the crime that's not always in the public. It's not that prosecution that you were talking about, but he's done work as auditor to do those more white-collar crimes. So he does have a lot of experience, although it's not as a prosecutor. He has that courtroom experience that does help out in this role. He's wanting to tackle repeat violent offenders. He wants to focus on internet crimes against children and focus on environmental protection, all those sort of big picture things that this role does for the state, really acting as the state's not only prosecutor, but sometimes defendant.
Yeah. This race certainly, again, we expect this to be a close one this evening, so it was just 34% of the vote in. This race has not been called here yet, but you can see, again, Torres with a sizable lead here at this point. Checking in again on some of our congressional races here, I do want to go back to what we're seeing in U.S. House District 2. Gabe Vasquez is retaining about a 3,000 vote lead over challenger Darshan Patel. Gabe Vasquez is, again, a prior Las Cruces city councilor running in Congressional District 2. This is an area representing parts of southern New Mexico, but this district also reaches up into the west side of Albuquerque now. So there's a good chance that if you're in the metro area, you could see some different names on the ballot and see candidates there from the southern part of the state and think to yourself, well, but wait a second. Did something change here? Did I used to be in a different congressional district? And yeah, the answer is redistricting happened. And yes, you're in a different district now on the west side. So this race, I think whoever wins this race is gonna go up against, of course, Yvette Harrell, the Republican challenger from Alamogordo. Yvette Harrell is as well going to, she's seeking her second. She is seeking her second term in office. This will be her third time running for the seat. She lost in the first election to Xochitl Torres Small, but this will be an interesting race, I think, already forecasting for November, because we're going to see some campaigning probably in Albuquerque, because there's a lot of voters to be had in Albuquerque in this district. So,
Chris, I want to bring us back to, we were talking about the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office race. We were talking about some of the Democratic candidates.
Yeah, we didn't get a chance to go to the Republican candidates, actually.
There's a lot more, yeah, to talk about. There were a bunch of Democratic candidates, more Republican candidates. There's 4 of them here. So far, it looks like Paul Pacheco does have a pretty good lead over some of the others. He's a Republican, of course, from Albuquerque. He's retired law enforcement. He has 27 years in APD. He's worked for the FBI. He has 2 years as the Albuquerque Police Officers Association president, so that's kind of the labor union for the police here in Albuquerque. He was also in the New Mexico House of Representatives. He served 4 years for District 23. He's at that role. He has had work to try to increase some penalties for crimes, adding to the state's 3-strike law, which would kind of increase penalties for certain crimes, limiting suspensions or deferrals of serious violent offenders. So really this kind of tough on crime record. He's talked about his priorities as being increasing the number of deputies on the street. He wants to do proactive policing and ending this, what he calls catch and release system, really by working with prosecutors. So we know that, you know, once someone is apprehended by the sheriff's office or other law enforcement, it is up to prosecutors to take them to court to charge them with those crimes. So he's talked about wanting to work hand in hand with that to reduce crime in the community.
Wow. So you are seeing, at least when we're talking about the sheriff's race, we have the Republicans. There's 4 Republican challengers. You're also seeing as well the Democrat side, where there are 6 Democratic challengers, with John Allen maintaining a lead here right now. You know, this is a situation where you have 10 people who are vying right now to be the next sheriff, but of course that gets narrowed down to 2 once we get through this primary here tonight. I do want to bring our viewers to a little bit of attention. We are awaiting what is happening from inside the Mark Ronchetti gubernatorial campaign headquarters here tonight in an Albuquerque hotel. You can see our live picture inside here. We presume that Mr. Ronchetti will be giving some sort of speech here soon, as again, Ronchetti has been declared the winner in this gubernatorial race for the Republican primary to face off against Democratic challenger Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham, seeking a second term here come November. Ronchetti, with just 29% of the vote in, still has more than 17,000 vote lead here, or excuse me, more than 17,000 votes to his name here tonight. Over and far more than the challengers he has there: Greg Zanetti, Rebecca Dow, Jay Block, and Ethel Maharg being the fifth challenger in that race. So we are awaiting to see what happens from inside the Ronchetti campaign victory headquarters, whatever you want to call it, here this evening. We do have a reporter there, Ann Perrette, our KRQE News 13's investigative reporter, Ann Perrette. She is there at the campaign headquarters this evening, trying to check in with her to see if she would or she has any pulse on what's going on out there. So, yeah, certainly a quick one for this race. It's not even 8 o'clock, and the polls closed, less than an hour ago. So,
well, in the months leading up to this, we've heard people talk about Ronchetti just not having that political experience. Of course, he's a TV meteorologist, has history here with KRQE News 13, but that didn't seem to matter for the voters tonight. They turned out for him, and it looks like are supporting him. I mean, it's interesting to note, too, Chris, that this is not what we saw at the Republican pre-primary convention there, which was several months ago. It was February 26 in Ruidoso, New Mexico. Around 1,000 Republicans gathered to kind of see who would make it to this stage at the primaries. So they vote to determine who would be on the Republican ballot for the primaries, and Mark Ronchetti did not make it in terms of votes. He only had about 23% of the votes at that pre-primary. Jay Block actually topped the list with about 30% of the votes. But Ronchetti had the required numbers of signatures so that he could get on the ballot anyways. So
yeah, it's really interesting because I think it begs the question: what does a pre-primary convention even mean to the voters? Arguably, I think some people are going to say it means nothing, because the results are so different. But it is a chance. I should say, I guess I'm being a little bit sarcastic, but. It is a chance, obviously, for other candidates to get involved in the process, and that's what it's all about, right? Putting your name out in front of people, getting a chance to talk to, people who are delegates who are involved in the party, and seeing what resonates with them. But it is also like a good reminder that a pre-primary convention does not mean the world. It can mean, I don't know, it can mean something, but.
Sure.
Certainly not tonight.
Allegiances can change, but I think what you're talking about, it's a place for them to mingle, to kind of organize their party, organize their positions, and for some of the lesser known candidates to get in front of the podium and kind of make their case for why they should be their party's candidates. So while the results didn't hold too much weight in this case, certainly a place for the politics to play out and to get some of that name recognition.
Well, we are, again, still waiting to hear from our Ann Perrette, who's out in the field. You can see the live picture there from the Ronchetti campaign headquarters. I know it's somewhere in Albuquerque here this evening, but I forgot exactly where. But he is expected to speak at some point here. Yeah. The two other gubernatorial candidates who are on there with the results in right now: Jay Block with a little more than 2,600 votes, and Ethel Maharg with a little more than 400 votes. So you can see that spread between the candidates is quite dramatic.
Yeah, certainly. Again, this goes back to the idea that they all have kind of a similar platform. Of course, they're all Republicans in this case, but maybe they just didn't have that name recognition. We saw that they didn't spend as much money, or maybe their message didn't resonate as well with the voters. Ronchetti certainly has been outspoken about a few key issues. Some of the other candidates have as well, but just didn't seem to click in this case. So it's interesting. Ronchetti has talked about really wanting to make New Mexico better for businesses. He's talked about wanting to cut costs and red tape here in the state and to lower taxes. That may be resonating with some of the business-owning Republicans. We know that there is a lot of industry in the state, a lot of small businesses that might feel that and might want to support a candidate that wants to help them along. He's talked about wanting to really reduce crime in this state. He sees it not only as a local trend, but a bigger issue. He blames things like what he calls soft laws and liberal judges. So definitely a position that could shake things up if further down the road he does unseat the current governor.
And we are seeing some of the images from inside the Ronchetti campaign headquarters here right now. You can see some of the folks gathered together out there. We are expecting to hear from candidate Ronchetti here sometime within the hour. So sometime here between 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock, we expect to hear from the Ronchetti campaign as they're gathered there in Albuquerque. While we do know the results of this election and nobody's out there talking right now, let's see if we can move on a little bit to some of these other races that we are dealing with here tonight. Just another quick check-in on the Attorney General's primary. You can see about 39% of the vote in, and it appears that Raul Torres has about a 5,000 vote lead over Brian Colon for the Democratic AG race as well. You can see here as well the U.S. House District 1 race. It appears Michelle Garcia Holmes is maintaining a lead over Luis Sanchez here at this point. Luis Sanchez, again, he is Albuquerque businessman, grew up here in the area. I believe Michelle Garcia Holmes as well is also a local from the area, and she is maintaining this lead here over over Luis Sanchez. Michelle Garcia Holmes has been running for office over the last about 5 years here now at this point. So she certainly has a lot of experience in it being in these election atmospheres, again, having won a few primaries. I believe the 2020 primary there, or 2018 for the congressional seat.
Chris, what are the current numbers on the state auditor race for the Democrats?
Yeah, the state auditor's race is looking like this right now. A pretty close one.
Very close,
Joseph Maestas with 23,000 votes and Zachary Quintero with 22,500 votes there. So not even a, 1,000 vote difference between the two. It is less than that, so pretty tight. We know Quintero, as we talked about a little bit earlier, he is a newcomer, so to speak, to the political scene, and he's a pretty young guy, hoping to earn his first office here. Quintero, as well, as we understand, has been working as the state's ombudsman during the COVID pandemic, essentially, throughout with the medical advisory team. So he has amassed a little bit of government experience over these last several years, and now looking to take this to an elected office with the Democratic primary. We do know that the Republicans are not running a candidate here in the primary tonight. One thing I think is also worth mentioning is the nature of I keep failing to mention this because a lot of these, it's interesting, we have these contests here, right? The Attorney General's race, for example. Whoever wins this will face off against a Republican challenger, Jeremy Gay, who's running unopposed here tonight. So there's several. If we're not mentioning it, usually it's because the candidate on the other side is either not there or they're running unopposed. So in the Attorney General's race, Jeremy Gay is the Republican candidate who is running for election there.
Those Attorney Generals, they do have a big pair of shoes to fill. Our current Attorney General, Hector Balderas, has kind of a long list of accomplishments for the state. He took office in 2015. He is from Wagon Mound, New Mexico, so smaller area, but came in and did a lot of work for the state. Everything from tackling the nationwide opioid case for our state, dealing with the Takata airbag case, the tobacco settlement, big cases that pay out a lot of money to locals and to the state itself to kind of administer expenses. So he started a lawsuit against Twitter and Google and others to kind of prevent them from tracking children online, which ended in a settlement. Millions of dollars in funds from that went to fund kind of internet safety in New Mexico. He's done lawsuits to recover historical documents from the Lincoln County War. So these are all the types of lawsuits that the Attorney General can do, all sorts of things to protect New Mexico's consumers especially, and businesses and people and environment. So a lot of work to be done at that office. So Torres, Colon, whoever wins this, might have a lot of responsibilities.
Yes, indeed. Well, talking about one of the big local races that we have had our eye on here tonight, as well as who is going to run to be the next Bernalillo County Sheriff. What we're seeing still is that John Allen is maintaining a lead with about 12,000 votes to Rudy Mora's about 7,100 votes. And on the Republican side, if we can pull up that graphic here for y'all, we can show you that as well. Paul Pacheco here with a 9,000 vote to 4,000 votes, say, lead over Derek Scott right now. So we'll see how things shake out, but those are your two lead vote getters here this evening. We do mention as well that, there are some local election races to pay attention to here. When we look at Bernalillo County, we have as well things to talk about, like the District 5 Democratic primary. That is for the county commission seat. There is a lot of folks in this primary. Charlene Petoskey, she is, right now, she is the current Bernalillo County Commissioner. She is down in votes to Eric Olivas right now. Charlene is running for this next term, essentially. She has been in this commission seat for some time here. I'm trying to recall her origin story on getting onto the commission, because I know there have been some appointments over the last year. But anyway, as you're seeing right now here, as she is vying to keep that seat, she is down to Mr. Eric Olivas right now. There are also 3 Republicans who are vying to run against the winner of the Democratic primary for, again, Bernalillo County Commission seat 5. Judy Young appears to have just a 40-vote lead over Wayne Yavalli, and then there's Michael Eustace Jr., who has 916 votes here as well. But again, early numbers here. We expect to see things change and more votes to probably take place here tonight. That is another one of those interesting races to keep an eye on. I know one of the other really competitive races that has been in the zeitgeist of Bernalillo County voters here in the last several weeks is the Democratic primary for, I believe this is District 1 in the Bernalillo County Commission race. And this is a Democratic primary again. You're seeing 2 candidates in there. We don't have a graphic for this one, but this is Aaron Muffaletto versus Barbara Baca. This has been a pretty hard-fought race, we know, in the North Valley. And Barbara Baca, who at one point did serve for Mayor R.J. Berry and was appointed to a position within his executive cabinet for the city. She right now is maintaining about a what looks like about a 4,000 vote lead right now over Aaron Muffaletto, who is coming in with about 1,900 votes to Barbara Baca's 5,900 votes.
Yeah,
So.
and that District 1 does cover a lot of the kind of central Albuquerque, south of Paseo del Norte to about Central Avenue, and about east to the freeway, really. So a lot of the heart of Albuquerque, the Rio Grande area, and a lot of the area west of that is covered by this. So far Northeast Heights and those areas are not within this district, but a lot of Albuquerque voters are.
Okay. Well, there are a lot of things to talk about tonight. I feel like just for some of the folks joining us here once again, we're going to go back to the results of the governor primary. Mark Ronchetti, again, is projected to win the gubernatorial nomination. He will face Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham in November. You can expect the advertising to come pretty quickly. We do know that there has been a lot of money raised in this race. We were talking about at the about an hour ago here, Curtis. We were talking about just how much money has been raised. You covered this in an article here that appeared on KRQE.com here tonight. Really quick, before we get back to it, we have another race to declare here. This is in relation to U.S. House District 2. We project that Gabe Vasquez will win the Democratic nomination there for U.S. House District 2. CD2, Congressional District 2, as you know it, this is now covering parts of the west side of Albuquerque, all the way down into southeast New Mexico, a lot of oil patch communities and whatnot. Gabe Vasquez is a Las Cruces candidate as well. So, you know, this is a vast district now that is covering parts of the metro area. Las Cruces is often a place that we don't often talk about on KRQE because they are part of the El Paso media market. So their news comes out of El Paso. They don't see our Albuquerque news. So not often we end up talking about them, but I think there's a little bit more connection here, a little more relevance with the redistricting that's happened there.
Yeah, and he's pushed for issues like building a stronger economy, increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour, supporting unionization. He's talked about bringing more health care, more high-quality, affordable health care to New Mexico, kind of citing the challenges that the state has had with the pandemic. He wants to lower the eligibility age for Medicare to 55 so that more folks can get things like Medicare. He really is pushing some of these big picture issues that we might expect from a congressional candidate.
We do want to talk about as well, I think one of the things that we have not gotten to talk about here yet this evening is just some of the races that are happening related to the state house races. There are a lot of interesting ones to go in and out around with, but I think some of the ones I want to mention here, I'm just going to pull up some of my notes because it is virtually impossible to remember all of this, but
there's a lot of them.
there are quite a bit of them. District 11 is one that I do want to start with. This is out in, again, District 11 represents parts of Albuquerque, and Javier Martinez, who is new to leadership in the state house, he filled the role that Cheryl Williams Stapleton stepped down from. He's the House Majority Floor Leader, and we do know that the Speaker of the House, Brian Egolf, is resigning as he has stepped down. He's no longer going to fill that role. His term is up as the House Speaker or as a state representative, is that powerful role of the House Speaker, and so I think people do look to Javier Martinez in District 11, who's running unopposed as a Democrat, as possibly somebody who may be next in line for that leadership role in the New Mexico House. And so this is the question as to who will challenge him in November. On the Republican side, Lisa Meyer Hagan, she is a local realtor. She is right now with just about 12% of the vote in, has 201 votes to Adrian Trujillo's 165 votes. So again, State House District 11. Javier Martinez's challenger in come November. State House District 12 is another one to keep your eye on here. This is one where Art De La Cruz is running and appears to have a vote lead here tonight over Melissa Armijo and Nicole Olonovich, I believe, if I'm saying it correctly. Art De La Cruz as well. You may recognize him as, I believe, a two-term Bernalillo County Commissioner. He moved out of that spot once he was term limited, and then he tried to run for the State House. He lost in 2020 in the Democratic primary to a woman named Brittany Barreras, and as I understand, she stepped down from that seat. Art De La Cruz was appointed to fill the seat, so in some ways he ended up getting right back there, but he was appointed to fill the seat right before the election, essentially. So Art De La Cruz, he appears to have a sizable vote lead. This is a district representing the South Valley of Albuquerque, and De La Cruz is certainly a name that a lot of people know in the area, a longtime politician for the area. District 17, this is another interesting one, Curtis. This is who is going to replace Debbie Armstrong. Debbie Armstrong is a close ally of Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham. She announced that she would not be running for re-election, and you see a familiar name on there. That is Cynthia Borrego, who has the lead. She is a former Albuquerque city councilor. She just lost her city council re-election bid for 2021. She ended up losing that to Dan Lewis. Dan Lewis, who ran for mayor and lost, but was previously a city councilor. So there's a lot of chain linking, you could say, with offices being run for and lost, and
And I will say,
office anew.
Someone like Cynthia Borrego is definitely going to be leaning on her past accomplishments as she's running. The kind of building on your not only expertise, but pointing to what you have already done in previous roles. We know she's talked about work she's done as a city councilor, including things like bringing new equipment to the Albuquerque Police Department, buying things through kind of capital outlay and funding, buying things for Albuquerque Fire and Rescue and the police to really trying to improve the community. And she's kind of leaning on some of that messaging to help her move forward in her political career and her name recognition, because I think, if you lived in a neighborhood that had her as a city councilor, you'll probably know her, you'll probably know some of the work she's done or the issues she's pushed. So definitely going to be leaning on, so it makes sense to have someone with that background running for a new position.
Again, House District 17 here. This is the race to replace Debbie Armstrong. And it's also interesting to note that some of these districts have shifted a little bit because of redistricting. So I can't speak to exactly how this district may have evolved from there, but we do know that just like the federal and congressional redistricting, I'm losing my words here. Just like the federal redistricting effort that reformed the congressional districts, probably the most high profile of them, the state reforms its districts as well for House and Senate, and then as well goes down to city and local levels. Bernalillo County, Albuquerque, they all do it. So.
I know some folks across the state have already gotten a letter in the mail saying that you might be in a new district thanks to that redistricting. I know I got one of those. So it doesn't change a whole lot, but just be sure to check out where you might be now if you lived in one of those areas that might have changed a little bit. If you're out there voting, you probably already know what the changes are.
And House District 17, there's also the Republican challengers in that race. Elias McMath is maintaining a lead over Joshua Neal right now. We know that these are two folks who are not maybe familiar with or they're newcomers to potentially this space. So this will be we'll see whoever is the outcome here tonight, how that challenge goes. It's always interesting to see when longtime lawmakers step down, who's going to fill the void. That is always a great question. I think that also speaks a lot to this next race I want to bring up here, District 26. Eleanor Chavez is running in the Democratic primary against Charisse Quesada. Quesada right there is actually the wife of Stephen Michael Quesada, who is the, of course, Bernalillo County Commissioner, famous actor. Everybody knows him from Breaking Bad. Eleanor Chavez as well, though, she has been within the you could say the state lawmaking mix before. She is a former state representative. She left that seat to run for a Senate seat, and that bid for a Senate seat years ago was lost. So she has been out of the mix, but she's looking to get back in there as a state representative. So Eleanor Chavez right now maintaining a lead over Charisse Quesada, and this again is the race to replace whoever, or Georgine Lewis, rather, I should say. Georgine Lewis, she indeed was arrested on charges related to DWI, and she announced that she would not run. Shortly after that arrest, she announced that she would not run to retain that seat.
Eleanor Chavez has talked about wanting to kind of diversify our state a little bit, especially in terms of big picture industries. Currently, our state is heavily reliant on the oil and gas industry. It regularly funds about a third of our state's entire budget. I mean, billions of dollars. But this candidate has talked about, pushing our film industry, the cannabis industry, some of these burgeoning industries here in the state to try to maybe eventually replace the oil and gas and these kind of fossil fuel industries. So some progressive politics here, but certainly will be interesting to see who wins the seat.
There is no Republican challenger, I should add, for this Republican for the primary in District 26. No Republican filed to fill that seat there. Which is, I would say, probably more common to see in some House or state legislative races because of the fact that that sometimes I think that the writing is kind of on the wall that a seat is that party's territory, and it's going to be a real uphill battle for folks to challenge it. But in this case, who knows what the decision was, but there is no Republican challenger. I do also want to cover as well State House District 38. This is the seat that will be vacated by Rebecca Dow, who has unsuccessfully run tonight for governor. She has lost, of course, to Mark Ronchetti in this gubernatorial primary for the GOP. We're getting a look inside right now from the Ronchetti campaign headquarters. It looks like a bunch of folks just took the stage. We are understanding that Mark Ronchetti is supposed to speak in about the next 9 minutes or so we'll bring that to you when that happens here. Our live streaming coverage will go until pretty close to about 9 o'clock, but we'll have to scoot out of here at that point because we're going to help transition into our coverage for KRQE News 13 at 9 on Fox. But I mentioned as well this race that we've got up on screen, State House District 38. We are seeing right now just some of the initial votes. Not a whole lot there. 143 votes for Tara Jaramillo running in the Democratic primary for House District 38. This as well is a seat that is covering Truth or Consequences. I believe it also covers parts of Hatch, if not perhaps all of Hatch. And maybe, actually, you know what? I'm getting that confused with, I believe, Silver City, actually. The district extends over into Silver City, not Hatch. Actually, that's in another district there. So
yeah, south of Socorro, kind of covering some of the White Sands Missile Range down to about Las Cruces. So including kind of east of Truth or Consequences. Certainly a little bit more rural area than some, but has these population centers with voters that care about things like their businesses, their health care. So certainly some important voter issues there that these candidates are going to be playing to.
This is the Republican primary results as well. Sandra Hammock is maintaining a lead over Melba Aguilar right now. So again, as we're going to take a look back, that is the race to replace Rebecca Dow and who's going to be running in November. This is the inside of the Ronchetti campaign headquarters here in Albuquerque this evening. We understand Mark Ronchetti is supposed to speak here in probably about the next 7 or so minutes, around 8:30 is what we were originally told. So we'll see a lot of these things get fluid at times, if you will. So it's hard to say sometimes exactly when.
Folks do look pretty lively there, though, so it looks like things are,
right.
The pace is still going there. Ronchetti has taken some strong stances on important issues. One of those being the border. It's a key issue here in New Mexico. We do have that southern border with Mexico. This candidate, Ronchetti, has talked about really wanting to send the National Guard down there. And just for the background is that the governor does kind of control where and what issues the National Guard handles. So he promises to order the National Guard to the border and to make what he calls a border strike force within the Department of Public Safety. That would be modeled after what Arizona has. They have kind of a multi-departmental task force to really deal with border safety, aimed at reducing violence, drug transport, those sorts of things. Although I will say, we did do some reporting here talking about how drugs and violence not only come from the southern border, but transported in from other borders, other states as well. So a lot of focus on this southern border, but crime in the community, of course, is a bigger issue.
There will certainly be, again, I think back to your results that you had pulled up here. Let's talk about the primary finances, and you can just see how much money is in this race here right now. I believe I'm seeing Ronchetti having raised more than $4 million in contributions to Michelle Lujan Grisham's about $7 million. And expenditures, Ronchetti spending more than $2 million here, and the governor spending nearly $4 million. So,
the governor
a lot of money left too.
Right now, the current governor, Michelle Lujan Grisham, does not need to spend a whole lot of money. That might be why we're seeing a little bit down in the numbers in terms of her spending. She's not running against other candidates in this primary election. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Ronchetti has generated a lot of funding. The vast majority of that is from in-state donors, from New Mexico-based donors. Michelle Lujan Grisham's finances are a little more varied in that the majority is still New Mexican, but some of the funds are coming from other states such as California. But yeah, they're going to be using those funds to generate more name recognition. You can expect more TV ads. You can expect more yard signs. And that spending probably will ramp up the closer we get to the November election. You're going to see them really talking about and taking strong stances with some of the issues that they've already made positions on.
Yeah, this is, again, a live look inside the Ronchetti campaign headquarters here tonight in Albuquerque as we're seeing a live video feed. We have one of our reporters, Ann Perrette, is there as well. We know we're keeping up with, I was just going to say, some of the other races, and the video feed switched on me. So this is inside the Raul Torres campaign right now. And just to give you a look at some of the latest results here, Raul Torres is maintaining a lead over Brian Colon tonight in this race for Attorney General in this Democratic primary. Torres has campaigned on this idea. He is a career prosecutor. He has tried to put Brian Colon in this sort of, you could say Brian Colon in a sort of light as a never prosecutor, and perhaps that's resonating here with voters here this evening, but this race has not been called yet, to be clear. But more than 29,000 votes right now for Raul Torres, 25,000 or so here for Brian Colon, with 44% of the vote in.
Yeah, Raul Torres has, you've probably seen in some of his TV ads, does have some background working with the Obama administration's Department of Justice. So he does have some of that big picture political experience in terms of work he's done. He has kind of touted his experience as a prosecutor, doing things like trying to put violent criminals, rapists, child abusers behind bars. He's really been leaning on that sort of experience and that name to give him an edge in this race.
Well, you're getting to see some of the behind-the-scenes footage here right now that is getting fed back here to the KRQE studios. But what we're seeing is that Raul Torres is leading Brian Colon in the AG's race right now. It is certainly too early to call, though, and we're going to keep our eye on that, bring you the latest results as soon as we can. And when it comes to, as well, though, we mentioned the Ronchetti campaign is expected to speak here momentarily. He is projected to win this. He has won this, essentially declared victory in this Republican governor's race nomination. My apologies. I know that folks can be probably pretty sensitive about what party they're associated with, so my bad. I'm doing too many button switches at once here. So we're going to bring you that speech here from the Ronchetti campaign as soon as it comes in here into the News 13 digital studio. We understand it should be here in the next couple minutes as his supporters are gathered out there in Albuquerque here tonight. So, yeah, we've talked about two of the biggest races here. We did just spend a little time talking about these state house races to keep an eye on. One of the other close ones as well that we know of is the state auditor's race. It remains close here this evening with 43% of the vote in. A newcomer to politics, relative newcomer, Zachary Quintero, is trying to beat out Joseph Maestas for the Democratic primary. There is no Republican running in this primary here as well. If you'd missed it a little bit earlier, U.S. House District 2, Gabe Vasquez is declared the winner in this primary race against a Dr. Darshan Patel, who works in Lee County, lives in the Lee County area. Darshan Patel was seeking the nomination here tonight, but obviously Gabe Vasquez possibly has perhaps a little bit more name recognition than Darshan Patel, although doctors are pretty well known. So, yeah, everybody knows doctors in there. We're seeing a little bit more activity here from inside the Ronchetti campaign headquarters, so just keeping our eyes on it as we are getting ready to bring you the live feed here. It appears his wife, Christy Ronchetti, is getting ready to address the crowd, so we'll take a listen in here right now and see what is happening, because I assume that Christy will be likely introducing her husband here, Mark, momentarily.
About you guys, as you guys all know, so I don't think there's anything else really more than we need to say other than, what do you think, Gabe? What do you think we should do?
I'd like to welcome to the stage my father, your future governor, Mark Ronchetti.
Thank you all so much. Wow. First and foremost, thank you for coming out tonight. Thank you for caring about your state enough to know that we can change it, and we will. I want to thank Christy and the girls. I can't get too in-depth into it or I'll be blubbering up here and you guys are like, come on man, spit it out. But she is the best partner I could ever imagine. She's absolutely, when you get home every night, she's like, did you see what they said on Twitter? Did you see what they said? I said, babe, it's okay. Ava and Ella, I know that when you guys came flying out at Presbyterian Hospital, you probably didn't imagine you're going to be ending up here. I know. But you are the light of our lives, and you are the reason we are here today. And there are families all over this state who don't want to ship their kids off to another state because we won't get it done here. And I promise you, that is going to stop. And I want to thank my mom and dad who are over here. And for two big reasons. One, you've never seen a big Italian Catholic family, all conservatives, end up arguing with each other as much as we did over politics. And then number two, and most importantly, we never missed Mass, not one time growing up. And I tell you, that was the basis of the faith I have today. It's a basis of faith that we share with the girls. Christy has her faith, and if you had not done that, I would not be here. It's not easy to put your name on the ballot. And I do want to say something to my opponents tonight from the Republican Party, and that is that I want to thank them for stepping forward and running. Every single one of them ran a great, hard-fought race, and so I'd like to tell them all congratulations tonight as well. And I think they're all going to be a huge part of what we do here going forward, there's no question. Now, I will say this, too. This is a great day for New Mexicans. But I'll tell you what, this is going to be a very bad day for the political elite who look out for their own best interests before yours. We have a beautiful state. There is no question about it. And we are honored to live here. But for far too long, we've seen elites in Santa Fe who decide what our lives are going to be. They have decided what we can do when we can do it. And they take their cues from California and D.C. when they should be taking them from Cadron County and Deming and Los Alamos and Taos and down to the south, across the southeast, places like Lovington and Holmes. We have a state that is so full of opportunity, but one thing the elites want more than anything else is power for themselves at any cost. So get ready. We are going into this race with eyes wide open. Get ready for the attack ads. The attack ads, they're going to try to scare you. they're going to try to bully, and they're going to try to distract.
Bring it on!
Bring it on as well. And that's okay, because all the false attack ads in the world can't change the answer to this simple question, which will define this campaign. Is New Mexico headed in the right direction? It's about to be. It's about to be. And what we look at now, and what we look at in this moment is that we have big change that is needed across this state. And unfortunately, we have a governor who has decided that she will look out for the best interests of the elites in Santa Fe instead of you. That day stops today. Too often, it's a divisive and extreme agenda following right in Joe Biden's footsteps. But we are here to build a broad movement of New Mexicans who believe in themselves and a better future for our state. We believe in you. We don't believe in government. You are the power in this state, not the government. And I don't care if you're a Democrat, a Republican, or you don't want to be part of either party. I get that too. But I'll tell you this much. You matter to this campaign, and your voice will be heard. Now, when I announced my campaign, I said I was running because politicians had forgotten us. And the fact is, we all know they don't listen. And I'm sure you've kind of caught on to this. I'm a political outsider, and if you think I'm apologizing for it, you're going to be waiting a long time. If years in government were all that mattered, Joe Biden would actually be a good president, and Ronald Reagan would have been a terrible president. So if you want a politician, I'm not your guy. However, if you want someone who is ready to take on a government now that is literally 40% bigger than it was when this governor took office. And I would ask you this simple question. Does bigger and bigger government make your lives better? Well, I've got news for you. Governor Lujan Grisham is the ultimate political insider. She's been a politician and a lobbyist for decades. And here's where we are. We are a state that fights the states around us and thinks, why are they taking our kids? Why are our kids moving out of New Mexico for a better life? We will build a better life right here. For every one of you. Because ultimately, it is you, the engine that powers this state. And make no mistake, for political elites, the party is more important than the people. And believe me, there are times I've seen that in my own race. I was not always the favorite of the political elites. Once again, I don't care. I care about you. That's what we care about. And it's these political elites, especially those in charge of Santa Fe, that think one set of rules applies to you and another applies to them. Somewhere along the way, they've convinced themselves that we work for them. No more. No more. Tonight that ends. We will defeat the politically powerful. This campaign will be built on the power of your voice, not on the power of their government. Look, I know this has been a rough couple of years. We've all felt it. During COVID, we lost 40% of our small businesses, closed for good. And the governor claimed we were in this together. But were we? She handed out massive taxpayer-funded pay raises for her political insiders while our businesses were shutting down. She told us not to get together with our families during the holidays while she spent thousands on high-priced beef and high-end alcohol. I got news for you. We got chips and salsa in the back, and you're paying for your own booze. Like I will give this governor credit. She is good. She's pretty good, in fact, at spending your money. She inherited the largest budget surplus in state history, and she raised taxes anyway. State government has never been richer, and it's never been more powerful. And I know so many of you feel that on your shoulders. We are here to empower you and to take that weight off your shoulders, because you are our best ally in this. But instead, if you go to Santa Fe, they get DC whispered in their ear. They get California whispered in their ear. So now I'll ask you a simple question. When we empower you, what happens to the government? They work for you again. You know, an issue I know all of you have seen over the past couple of days is one that I just want to touch on here, and it's when this governor ran 4 years ago. She said our leaders need to be held accountable for the performance of CYFD. 4 years later, we have horrific story after horrific story about unspeakable abuse. The CYFD answer under this governor is to cover it up, erase communications in an effort to protect power. Well, they can't erase the memory of the children that they've failed to protect. We won't forget. Governor Lujan Grisham has been totally silent as children have been the victims of horrendous abuse and the cover-ups under her watch. So I want to say one quick thing on this too. For those of you that are foster parents, you are heroes in this state. You are helping children in this state, and you should be treated like it. As your next governor and the father of 2 girls, I promise I will never be silent when it comes to fighting for our kids. And if we have a CYFD structure that we need to tear down to the studs, we will absolutely do it. So many families tonight will go to bed across this state having more month than money. You go to get gas and it's nearly $5 a gallon. And what we're looking at is a radical and reckless policy by the Biden administration and this governor. And it has put us, one of the most energy-rich states in the country, looking around going, here we are, we're here to help. But we can't do it, not with this governor. Just last session, she put a bill up in front of the New Mexico legislature that would have raised gas prices on every one of you an additional 35 cents a gallon. So tone deaf, it's frightening. California's now hit $10 a gallon in some spots. This is the road for New Mexico if we keep going the way this governor wants to go. It's just not that hard. How about you fight for Silver City instead of fighting for San Francisco? How about we speak for, say, Los Lunas instead of Los Angeles? On my watch, we will stand up to President Biden and we will unleash New Mexico energy. I'm no genius, but I'm pretty sure it makes a lot more sense to produce oil and gas in Lovington, Hobbs, and Carlsbad than it does in Saudi Arabia, Venezuela. It's ridiculous. Look, many of you came here tonight, and you have to think about, when do I leave the house? When is it safe? We now live in a state that's become lawless. And too often, when our families leave the house, we have to make sure that we don't let them leave so that they don't ever come back. We used to have a state where everyone knew someone with a crime story. But now, sadly, we all have a crime story. The fact is, in this state, today, under this governor, it's easier to be a criminal than a cop. That will change. Just a few hundred yards from where we're standing here, last year, there was a mass shooting in a parking lot. The governor's been in office for 4 years. And I would ask you, has she addressed crime? Has she done anything on her watch to get this under control? Oh no, actually she has. She's gone to our police and she said, I'm gonna make doing your job harder, and I'm gonna take away your qualified immunity and target you as crime is spiking. That has to change. There's no doubt. Our police have been targeted. There's no question. Our business owners have been targeted. It's time now for common sense. I feel like maybe, just maybe, we should all put on t-shirts that just say, we won't do dumb things. How about that? How about that? For example, crime is spiking. We're not going to target our police. We're going to support our police and keep violent criminals in jail by ending catch and release. We won't do stupid things like try to jack up energy prices for low-income families that are barely making ends meet just so we can take the New Mexico Green New Deal and say to California, we're right behind you. Perhaps the biggest failure of this governor is our education system. We're 51st now that they count Washington, D.C. She pushed the most extreme lockdowns in the country long after science said, open it back up. And long after neighboring states with Democratic governors opened their schools back up. She kept schools closed while she forced jewelry stores to open. Must be nice. Now our children are even further behind, and she has no plan to catch them up. That's the worst part. Our kids sit there, and we wait for the results of the standardized testing. The girls took those standardized tests in April. Many of your kids did too. But we wait now, and we wait for the results. But in a way, we probably know the results. Our kids have to be in school to learn. Our control has to be at the school board and parent level, not at a bunch of bureaucrats in Santa Fe. I promise you, we will engage you as parents, as your governor, and we'll pour more money into the classroom. We will get each child that needs additional tutoring the help they need. We have the money. We have the money. We can do this, and we can crank it back up. We can get your kids back in the classroom, and we can get better results. Every at-risk child deserves to know that they have a chance with a great education. And we'll focus on teaching them reading, writing, history, science, and math. For one thing, we won't teach them how to hate each other. I promise you that. And we'll put you parents and the school districts back in charge of our schools. We're facing a tremendous challenge. It's decades in the making, and so many of you have seen the ruling class in Santa Fe, and the reality is they don't live the lives we live. But none of this will change until we stand up together. We stand up as Republicans, as Democrats, as independents, as people who don't want a title at all, but just want a government that serves them, and a government that doesn't continue to crush us. And I'll tell you, I am an optimist by nature, and I believe New Mexico's best days definitely lie ahead of us. So long as we take back our future, so long as we turn the tide from the old path of political elites, which we know is not working, to a new course that it will empower our people and no longer hold them down. So if you're ready for that day, we ask you to join us tonight. We will do this together. I promise you that. With humility, with faith in God, and faith in a state that is the best state in this country, and we will turn this around. God bless you all, and God bless the great state of New Mexico. Thank you.
Excited crowd there, welcoming the victory there tonight from the GOP candidate, Mark Ronchetti, who is running for governor now against Michelle Lujan Grisham. Ronchetti, of course, a TV weatherman, former KRQE News 13 employee, winning handily tonight with the results, as you can see. We'll put them on your screen here right now. With more than 38,000 votes here at this point, Ronchetti has such a sizable lead. There's no way that the competitors can reach back in there, and we do know that his win has obviously not only been acknowledged here, but pretty quickly was acknowledged this evening by the folks in the even the Republican Governors Association here. I do want to, out of fairness, we did not have an opportunity to see, a video feed from Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham here tonight. She is, of course, running for re-election, and she is running unopposed, but there is this statement here that she sent out tonight. She said, quote, "I extend my sincere appreciation for every New Mexico voter who exercised their sacred and fundamental right to vote. Over the last 3.5 years, we've made significant strides to improve the lives of all New Mexicans. From record investments in New Mexico classrooms to rebuilding our infrastructure to growing an economy that is leading the nation in job growth." This is half of a quote from Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham. Second half, this continues, again, a quote from the governor saying, "This election, we face a choice between continuing that path forward or taking us back, between a leader who has committed their life to the state of New Mexico and someone who has admitted they don't know the challenges New Mexicans face, between someone with a track record of building consensus and delivering results and someone who has never run a business or served our state." So clearly, those being the words there from the governor indirectly towards Mark Ronchetti there, saying he's never run a business or run the state and doesn't know the challenges New Mexicans face. That came in a statement tonight from the governor's campaign, her re-election campaign, as she seeks another term. Curtis, I know we got to get out of here pretty quickly here to help out our colleagues on KRQE News 13 at 9. Gabe Sanchez is going to be joining us for live coverage online for the newscasts, and we got to help put those elements together. Just to run really quickly, Curtis, let's go through some of these races here tonight, what you're seeing in these last final results. Go ahead, Curtis.
Oh, yeah. Well, we see Raul Torres still has a little bit of lead over Brian Colon. Again, they're both running for Democratic Party's Attorney General, so that's kind of the statewide legal counsel for New Mexico, really. They're going to be in charge of defending and prosecuting big statewide issues, things like internet crimes, things like wide fraud, or out-of-state companies that are targeting a lot of New Mexicans. So big picture issues here, both some strong candidates with a lot of kind of trial courtroom experience, but it's a pretty close race here. And we've seen them get real heated in debates, but it looks like Raul Torres has taken the lead so far.
We do have our reporter, Gabrielle Burkhardt, is going to be out there. She will be joining us live online, or excuse me, live on air on KRQE News 13 at 9 here momentarily. Let's get really quickly just to recap some of these other big races. Michelle Garcia Holmes still has that lead over Luis Sanchez, getting closer to possibly winning the nomination in Congressional District 1 here tonight. That's a district that represents much of Albuquerque, but now stretches down into the Roswell area. The other primary to watch tonight here for the congressional districts, Gabe Vasquez. He has won this nomination for the Democratic Party in Congressional District 2. The challenger, Gabe Vasquez, will face Yvette Harrell in November. And I should add as well, I missed this on our last one, the challenger here in House District Race 1, the Republican challenger who wins tonight will face Melanie Stansberry, the Democrat who is running unopposed here this evening. State Auditor's race really quickly. Joseph Maestas is leading Zachary Quintero here at this time being. Maestas is a former mayor of this town of Espanola. He also had a stint in the city of Santa Fe, attempted to run for mayor there as well in 2018. Right now he appears to have a little bit of a lead there. The Democratic Treasurer's race, Laura Montoya is edging out Heather Benavides. Laura Montoya served as the Sandoval County Assessor for 2 terms. Montoya is now seeking this statewide Treasury office against Heather Benavides, who as well has been closely aligned with Tim Eichenberg, the current state treasurer. And let's just recap very quickly the sheriff's race. It appears John Allen is in the lead in the Democratic primary. John Allen seeking the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Democratic nomination. And then as well, we have the Republican Sheriff's nomination here. Paul Pacheco is leading there, a former state representative who is now seeking this job as the top lawman in Bernalillo County. Many more races to cover here, Curtis. Any parting thoughts before we head out here?
I think it was an interesting night. You know, we saw to some extent maybe that money talks in terms of that gubernatorial election. We saw Ron Ketty secure a victory there. He, of course, had kind of the most financial backing apart from Michelle Lujan Grisham. But some of these other races have been pretty close, or continue to be pretty close. So it'll be interesting to see if those gaps widen a little bit. But overall, I think this could shake up things. Of course, main election will be later on in November. So on the way to that big election, we're going to be seeing a lot more political ads, a lot more accusations being thrown. We already saw that with Ron Ketty's acceptance speech of this this nomination. We've heard in Michelle Lujan Grisham's statement kind of firing back at Ron Ketty that this is probably going to be a heated race for the governor's office this November.
Indeed. Well, Curtis, yeah, we do expect to have a very competitive governor's race here, and a lot of advertising that's going to be probably playing out, and a lot of people by all accounts, if you're seeing this right on the screen right now, you can just tell how many millions of dollars are still waiting to be spent here in this Albuquerque race, this gubernatorial race. What am I thinking? All right, well, just want to give you a little behind-the-scenes look. KRQE News 13 at 9 starts in just a few minutes on KRQE.com. You're going to have to switch over to a new live feed to catch out our live stream on there, but you can see our 2 anchors there, Dean Staley, Jessica Garate up there on set. We are going to end our coverage here online for the time being. We do appreciate y'all joining us here for your local election headquarters online coverage. Curtis, thank you as well.
Thanks for having me, Chris. It's always good to be here. Always happy to help.
And thanks again to you, the viewer, for joining us here online. Download the KRQE News 13 app. We'll send you alerts anytime we go live streaming, doing coverage like this. And of course, if we don't see you between now and November, we'll see you in November.